we always assumed the aliens would have to at least be alive to invade. Not even H.G. Wells expected an invasion of ghosts. Stephen King, The Tommyknockers.
Welcome to Light and Shadow, a podcast about the complex themes presented in the horror genre. I'm your host, Nicole, and it's time to share another dark tale.
Hello, friends and weirdos, and welcome back to another episode of Light and Shadow, a rabbit trail episode of Light and Shadow. This is not a Fundamental Frights episode. It is not a religion and horror episode. I'm calling this a Stephen King detour. And like most constant readers, there are many times when we try to engage with new horror, fresh horror, and we find ourselves back on a Stephen King detour. And that's what happened to me. I had planned on doing a story time episode, because I haven't done one in a while, but a story time episode of A Color Out of Space. I have wanted to do a version of that story for a long time. I started working on it, and then got an idea to kind of go in a different direction with it, and that is going to require more time, more thought, more work. And so I thought, instead of pushing this out, I'm going to delay it, do it the way I really want, and release it later. But in the meantime, I couldn't sleep one night because insomnia runs in my family, and I really have trouble sleeping sometimes. And I have found that when I can't sleep, sometimes I will turn on the X-Files. That is good sleepy TV for me. Or I will read. Absolutely will not look at my phone. That doesn't work. So I will leave my phone in my bedroom. I will get up. I will grab a book. I will go in a different room, read for a while, and that always helps me sleep. And often I like to grab something I've already read, because if I'm reading something new and interesting, well, that doesn't help me sleep because I don't want to put the book down. And of course, I have more Stephen King on my shelves than anything else. So often, when I need a sleepy book, I grab a Stephen King book. So that happened to me recently, a couple weeks ago. Couldn't sleep. Went into my bookcase and was perusing, do I read a short story collection for the millionth time? I definitely don't want to start a new short story collection. So I thought, Tommyknockers. I've only read that book once, so it'll be interesting enough, but not so interesting that I can't sleep. So that's what I did. I grabbed Tommyknockers. And a lot of times when I grab a sleepy book, I don't necessarily intend to start the book, read the whole book. Sometimes I just read enough to get to sleep and I never pick it back up. But I found myself re-engrossed in the Tommyknockers. And it's one of his books that is not very well regarded, even by himself. And I remember the first time I read it, expecting it to be really awful, but enjoying it. Of course, the first time you read it, you don't know what's going to happen, so you're just watching it all unfold. This time, on the reread, I found myself enjoying it again. And instead of putting it down, I read the whole book again in a week. And of course, I only found out afterwards, in doing a little bit of research for this episode, that Tommyknockers is partially inspired by A Color Out of Space. So my brain is on this sci-fi track, even though I didn't intend for it to be. I love it when a theme comes together. when you find, trends and content that you're watching. I love that. We also recently rewatched Interstellar. So, like I said, it's just interesting that all of this sort of like sci-fi, space, alien stuff is rolling around in my brain right now. So I thought, I've enjoyed Tommyknockers. I want to talk about it. And I think another reason why I wanted to discuss this story is not just because I enjoy the book. I mean, there are lots of King books and stories that I love that I've never talked about. But I think what makes Tommyknockers special is the quirkiness of it, the weirdness of it, and the disdain for it. It occupies, I think, a really unique space in the King universe. Both the book and the miniseries are kind of infamous. And so that fascinated me as well. And I wanted to just look a little bit into, why is this book so infamous, yet intriguing? So just me enjoying it again, plus being interested in why it sits where it sits in the King canon, it drew me in. I've been thinking about it a lot. So if you're not a constant reader, if you're not a King fan, I hope that you will still enjoy this journey. If you're not a reader, never fear. I will also be talking about the miniseries. And I don't know, maybe you'll be inspired to go down this strange little rabbit trail with me one way or another. So this book has a little bit of an interesting history. It sits in a very important place in King's life. This book is the last of what I'm calling the drug novels. Stephen King famously had major addiction issues in the 70s and the 80s. Alcohol, big one, and that evolved into all types of drugs, but Coke was the big one. I mean, people make jokes about it all the time. Famously, he does not remember writing Cujo, and this book, Tommyknockers, is the last book he wrote under the influence of drugs. And on the Losers Club podcast, they specifically talk about, at this point, this book was published in the 80s, the mid-80s, and at this point, he was a big deal. He was a name. He was a brand. And so he's fueled by his creativity, he's fueled by his addiction, and he also maybe has a lot of yes men around him who maybe aren't saying, hey, Stephen, this book is rough in some places and you could pull back. So you have a little more indulgence than maybe is needed in this novel. But also I think that's why we get some of the bonkers stuff that really, I think, gives this book flavor. Not the drugs, the lack of editing, just to be clear. I don't think that Stephen King in particular, or really any creative, is better under the influence of drugs. And actually, Mike Flanagan at the Overlook Film Fest last year said that he certainly is not more creative or talented under the influence of alcohol. And he said that there is no way he could have written Midnight Mass if he had not gotten sober. He wrote, I guess, a couple drafts of it, but it wasn't until after he got sober that he was able to tighten that story up and really know how to finish it and polish it. So I just want to be upfront about that I do not think King was better when he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So anyhow, partially because of him being sort of at the end of his drug addiction, drug abuse. In a 2014 interview with Rolling Stone, King acknowledged that the quality of his writing suffered during his period of drug use, saying, "The Tommyknockers is an awful book. That was the last one I wrote before I cleaned up my act. That was the last one I wrote before I cleaned up my act, adding he believes it could be a good book if it was rewritten to about half its original length. And then in his book on writing, which is a wonderful book, he has this to say. In the spring and summer of 1986, I wrote the Tommyknockers, often working until midnight, with my heart running at 130 beats a minute and cotton swabs stuck up my nose to stem the coke-induced bleeding. Tommyknockers is a 40s-style science fiction tale in which the writer/heroine discovers an alien spacecraft buried in the ground. The crew is still on board, not dead, but only hibernating. These alien creatures got into your head and just started, well, Tommy knocking around in there. What you got was energy and a kind of superficial intelligence. The writer, Bobby Anderson, creates a telepathic typewriter and an atomic hot water heater, among other things. What you gave up in exchange was your soul. It was the best metaphor for drugs and alcohol my tired, overstressed mind could come up with. Not long after that, my wife, finally convinced that I wasn't going to pull out of this ugly downward spiral on my own, stepped in. It couldn't have been easy. By then, I was no longer within shouting distance of my right mind, but she did it. She organized an intervention group formed of family and friends, and I was treated to a kind of this is your life in hell. The point of this intervention, which was certainly as unpleasant for my wife and kids and friends as it was for me, was that I was dying in front of them. Tabby said I had my choice. I could get help at a rehab, or I could get the hell out of the house. She said that she and the kids loved me, and for that very reason, none of them wanted to witness my suicide. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to work anymore if I quit drinking and drugging, but I decided, again, so far as I was able to decide anything in my distraught and depressed state of mind, that I would trade writing for staying married and watching the kids grow up, if it came to that. It didn't, of course. The idea that creative endeavor and mind-altering substances are entwined is one of the great pop intellectual myths of our time. So it's very clear, and according to even King himself, that addiction is a huge theme in this book. The main character, well, one of two main characters is Gardner. He's an alcoholic, but he's maybe the most pathetic alcoholic we've seen. There are lots of writers and lots of addicts in King's novels, but James Gardner is just kind of a loathsome man. And I personally find myself rooting for him, but he is really quite pathetic. And I think knowing that this was the last drug novel and hearing King's own words about it and about how he felt about himself at the time, I think it's very clear that this addiction thing has sort of spiraled all the way down in King's personal life as well as in his themes and his characters. And I find it very interesting that King has spent his whole career kind of trying to explain and unravel what addiction is. Addiction is something that humans fall prey to. It doesn't have to be a substance. We can be addicted to all types of things, but it is this weird sort of quirk in our programming. And even though I've never had an addiction to like a substance, so I certainly don't understand what it's like to be an alcoholic or a drug addict, but I still find King's thoughts about it and the way he describes it and the way he tries to make sense of it in really flawed characters, I find it to be super relatable. There's something just very human about it that I really appreciate. And it's something that he's explored even after he got sober. I think probably most notably in Dr. Sleep. Danny Torrance is an adult and he is an alcoholic like his father was. And King had been sober a long time when he wrote that book. But it's just this really core central thing in his writing that I think will always be there. Because, again, King is fantastic at talking about humanity, talking about just the real nitty gritty of what it's like to be a person and relationships and all the things that come along with just being a human on this earth. And so seeing addiction through his lens has always been really interesting and valuable to me. More specifically about the book, I've gone on about sort of the history of the book and the background of the book. But why do I like this book specifically? One, it is one of what I call Stephen King's town novels. I would say the other two really notable town novels are It and Salem's Lot. And what I mean by that is in the course of the narrative, you have sort of the main story and the main characters, but at some point there's a departure where King takes you into little vignettes of just other people who live in this town. So in Salem's Lot, there are whole chapters that are just called The Lot. And they take us away from our main character of Ben Mears and tell us what's going on with these other people. In It, we get the dairy interludes, which the dairy interludes are some of my favorite parts of the book. We leave our sort of main action and we go with Mike Hanlon to visit people who have lived in dairy for a long time, and they tell us about the history of dairy. This happened 20 years ago. This happened 40 years ago. And in both cases, It and Salem's Lot, having these little times where we step away from the main action and we get sort of a microscopic view of what's going on in a specific case, it really adds rich context and depth to the story. It sort of fills out the world, if you will, so that when you come back to the main characters and the main action, you have all this sort of rich background that helps you understand what's going on. So I love those. Love taking those little detours. And on a side note, I hear that the new Max show, Welcome to Dairy, is supposed to be based upon the dairy interludes. So fingers crossed that they don't screw it up. So where the Tommyknockers differs for me from the other town novels is that I actually do not love spending time with the people of Haven. Our main characters, Gard and Bobby, they're the ones who, Bobby tripped over the ship. She's trying to dig it up. Gard comes out, sees that she's unwell, tries to tell her this thing is hurting you. She ignores it. She keeps him drunk. He's helping her dig it up. Like, this is really, these two people, their relationship and their characters, to me, are super compelling. It's the ship, it's Gard and Bobby. That's the heart of this story. And so King attempted, as he did with Salem's Lot and It, he attempted to zoom out and show us how this ship was having an effect on the rest of the town. And in theory, I like that idea, but I found it to be much less effective in this book. I would still like to see those things and read about these different people and how the ship is affecting them. But I think maybe, and this is where he's maybe talking about where he would cut it down, because we really only get a little bit of the intro, and then we sort of, I think, go to the town too soon. So, love some character development, love some quirky small town characters. But I feel like we go there a little too soon and we maybe stay there a little too long. But I didn't really come here to talk about the things I don't like, because you can go get that anywhere. I came here really to talk about things I do like. And one of the things I really like about this story is that, to me, it's very original. And sci-fi and aliens and space, it's not really my jam. Even though I love the X-Files, I usually skip over the episodes that are the alien government conspiracy. I find that to sort of all be kind of like tedious and a little boring. So it's not my favorite genre. But in this story, we have a spaceship, but the aliens are dead. The spaceship has been in the ground for what our main character Bobby assumes is thousands, tens of thousands of years. It's probably been in the earth since like before humans were on the earth. So it's been there a long time. The creatures within it are dead, but because they're this advanced species, when she starts to uncover the ship, the like power from the ship just starts to radiate out and influence people and change the way they think and even change their bodies. And I think this is a really interesting kind of novel approach. It's not monsters. It's not big giant aliens literally invading your space. It's just this sort of low level pervading influence that starts out very small and then grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's a really cool concept. I think it's really original. I think it's a very cool twist on an alien tale. I also really like the characters for the most part. I already mentioned Guard a little bit, but I want to talk about Bobby. Bobby, I think, is a really great female protagonist. She's a writer. She seems very kind of just like no nonsense. She lives out in the woods by herself with her dog. Her family situation is difficult and like her family maybe doesn't approve of her life choices. But she's a writer living her best life in the woods. I think part of it is it's just like, I want to go live. I want to go live in Bobby's little cute country house and take walks in the woods with my dog every day. But preferably I would like to not trip over a spacecraft that's going to end in my demise. But just really love Bobby. Just down to earth, cool chick. I want to hang out with her. And then Guard is, not a likable person. He is a hopeless addict. He's a drunk. He's a poet who I guess had some talent, but is on his way down. He's just kind of a pathetic man. He comes to Bobby in this story when he has like nothing else left. But the two of them together, their relationship is very, I don't want to say sweet, but it feels real because they are not lovers. They do occasionally sleep together, but they're not lovers. They're friends. But they have a very deep relationship that is not defined. It's very nuanced. It's very complicated. And I really appreciate that. Now there are some modern day problems with it. Like they first got together when Bobby was Guard's student, which is questionable. I assume she was of age because I believe he was her college professor, but still that's a little icky. That detail could be updated. But anyway, regardless of that, if we're talking about just two adults in this messy relationship, I find it very endearing and very real. And also, I would love to see more of them because in the book, by the time Guard gets to Bobby, she is already in the grips of becoming a Tommyknocker, and she's already lost a lot of weight, and she's already like done a bunch of inventions, and so we don't really get to see Guard and Bobby together, just sort of as friends. And I feel like that's where we get to the town stuff where we're with other characters just too soon. I would love to have spent more time with Guard and Bobby, and Guard slowly realizes that Bobby is into something that is not good. But more on Guard, to go back to his complicated nature, he's not a character that we really like like. Like I said, he's pathetic. He's made some really awful choices. He's not a good guy. And so the fact that he is the only one not affected by the Tommyknocker influence is really interesting. So he has a metal plate in his head. He had a skiing accident when he was a teenager, and they had to put a metal plate in his head. And of course, we learned that if you have metal in your body, that blocks sort of the Tommyknocker influence, whatever it is that's coming off the ship. And because of that, he's immune to the effects. And so he is uniquely situated to see what is happening to everyone. But also he's like very sort of ineffectual to do anything about it because one, he's not the hero type. And two, Bobby keeps him drunk, takes advantage of his weakness and keeps him drunk. So he's kind of incapacitated. He's just a body to help her dig up the ship, which is also very sad because, again, you see glimpses of the relationship they have and you realize that she must really be in a bad place if she's willing to hurt her best friend in the world and use him. So again, the addiction metaphors are strong here, but the fact that Guard has to be the one to sort of like save the day and sacrifice himself, to me, it means a lot because it's not like he's not a John Wayne type. His moral compass is not strong. He has to sort of like do this thing simply because he is the only one who can do it, not because he has some big, moral change or he becomes a good guy, really. And I find that very compelling and I find it very kind of fascinating and it rings true to human nature. And I do wonder if that is how King, saw himself and sort of hoped that, hey, in spite of my own shortcomings and all my bad decisions and the way I feel about myself, is there a way I can come out of this and ultimately like show up for the world in the way that I need to? I don't think he consciously was thinking that, but he also wasn't consciously thinking that he was Jack Torrance when he wrote The Shining, and very clearly Jack Torrance is Stephen King. This is why art's important, folks. It helps us work out our stuff that maybe we don't even know we have. Okay, so that's all the real kind of like serious stuff, whatever. Another reason why I really like the Tommyknockers is because it is bonkers. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't like it. I'm here. I'm here for the weirdness. There is a talking picture of Jesus in this book. There is a flying Coke machine that flattens a man. And I think we have to acknowledge this because in Maximum Overdrive, which is the only movie King directed, someone gets dispatched by a Coke machine. I mean, I think there's a theme here. So I do, and the first time I read Tommyknockers, I was like, this feels like Maximum Overdrive. And I really dig it. So I kind of like that all the inventions are kind of dumb and all of these town folks are kind of dumb. And so the inventions they come up with aren't super ambitious. I really like that a lot because usually with sci-fi and aliens, everything is like super high tech and super sophisticated. And like, meanwhile, the townsfolk are making these little weird, stupid inventions. Like, I don't know. It's bonkers, but I do like it. And I like that it expands just the folklore of Maine. Derry is the closest town to Haven, where Tommyknockers takes place. And so we hear a lot about Derry. Derry is like the big city, not big city, like the big town next to Haven. So that's where the hospital is. That's where the state police are. So when folks try to go outside of Haven to like ring the alarm of like, this is happening in Haven, something weird's happening in Haven, they go to Derry. And I just like living in that world. And we even get a couple of, Pennywise nods, which can be annoying. But in this book, I feel like he did a good job of just sort of weaving that in. There are some other King Universe references that are not as forgivable, but I really like being back in this weird little world of Maine. And it's just like, man, like, what is wrong with Maine? Like, why is an elder monster living in the sewers of Derry? Why did this huge spacecraft crash land there? I mean, you could go on and on. Well, why does the Wendigo live there? I'm just saying, Maine might be cursed. Oh gosh. I mean, I think that's about it for me tooting the horn of this book. I realize I did not even give you folks a synopsis of what this book is about. And that is because this is just, like I said, this is Stephen King Detour. This episode is not as structured as you would normally get. But if anything that I just said sounds at all intriguing, check it out. It's like a 700-page book, and it's not all great. But if you're in the mood for something a little goofy that still has some important things to say and a few very beautiful passages, it's a good summer read. Break it out. Go find it. You can actually find a first edition of the Tommyknockers between $30 and $50. If you don't want to spend that much, you can get a paperback off eBay or whatever. So it's one of the more attainable Stephen King first editions, I will say. So as I said earlier, though, this is a book, but not only is it a book, it's a miniseries. And the Tommyknockers miniseries was released in 1993, and that is smack in the middle of the golden age of Stephen King miniseries. These used to be quite an event. But I don't want to say too much more about that because it's really fun to talk about King all by my lonesome. As you can see, I'm capable of doing it. However, especially when we're talking about a goofy Stephen King adaptation, it is way more fun to bring people along for the ride. And so I coerced my sweet, sweet, long-suffering husband into watching and discussing the Tommyknockers miniseries from 1993. So without further ado, let's leave the world of books and get into the miniseries.
From the best-selling novel by Stephen King, Haven, a sleepy New England town whose patriotic spirit is alive and well.
Tommyknockers knocking at the door.
But lately, another kind of spirit has been knocking at Haven's doors.
Tommyknockers knocking at the door.
Something is happening here.
2 disappearances in 1 week. That's more than a coincidence.
All my years in the force, I've never seen anything like it.
Something unearthly.
It's just gonna change everything.
What's it like, this, feeling?
Let's experience it together.
Something evil.
Something is happening to you. Something's happening to this town. And I'm telling you, it has something to do with that thing in the woods in there.
There are those who believe.
We are about to reach the final phase.
There's something there, all right. And that something has made the whole town go to hell fast.
There are those who deny.
Whatever this thing is making you, whatever the hell it's doing to you, it's not good, Bobby. Are you ready to become one voice that will soon be free?
There are those who refuse to give in.
Shame on you, Bobby Anderson. Shame on you.
You've got nothing to fear of. One voice.
One voice. You're like a vampire. You and your precious Tommyknockers.
From the world's undisputed master of horror comes an extraordinary tale of terror.
Join us.
Jimmy Smits, Marg Helgenberger, Joanna Cassidy, Stephen King's The Tommyknockers.
Okay, so David is here with me today.
I am.
And the reason that David is here today, it's not that David is really into Stephen King. He really is familiar with Stephen King mainly because you live with me.
Generally, yeah.
But I mentioned the Tommyknockers the other day, and you made the mistake of mentioning that you had watched the Tommyknockers when it first came out.
I did. I did that.
So when I decided to randomly take a detour and talk about this book and this miniseries, I decided to just co-opt your Saturday and make you rewatch it with me.
Yeah, and I haven't had anything to drink yet. So
maybe I can make it
sounds like I drink regularly. No, I just drink mostly before the podcast.
I mean, on Saturdays, on Saturdays we have some sips. Maybe I need to make us some kind of green concoction.
Yeah, is there some type of Tommyknockers drink? Is there something they drink? I know he references whiskey a lot. You told me different whiskey references. Is there any references in Tommyknockers?
You know what? That's a great question.
Did it make the miniseries? Probably not.
Probably not. But yes, the main character is quite an alcoholic. So maybe if there's not a Tommyknockers drink, we need to come up with one.
Okay, so that's part of the zero recollection.
Well,
the what now?
Well, I don't remember. I just read the book, and he's an alcoholic, and I can't remember if that makes it into the story. But before we talk a little bit more about Tommyknockers specifically, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Stephen King miniseries in general, because when we were kids in the 90s, they were a big deal.
They were a prominent part of the slate for ABC specifically, right? ABC was like exclusively for them.
I think there were other networks, but I think ABC was the main one.
When it went to ABC, they like ramped up the marketing specifically.
Yes.
It sounds like they spent a lot of money to get it, and then they're like, we're going to get our return on this.
Yes, and they really, they were a big deal to a lot of people, whether they were King fans or not. They were kind of an event. And especially before the days of streaming, you had to be tuned in every night and sitting in front of the TV so you could talk about it with your friends the next day or whatever.
Or primitive piracy of recording the VHS.
Yes, and then watching it for years to come until it wouldn't play anymore.
Until it was available at the rental.
Yeah. So I wanted to do just a quick rundown of like all of the miniseries, and not all the ones that have ever existed, but specifically in the ones in the 90s, because those are the ones we remember watching on TV, and those are the ones that are considered like the golden age of miniseries. So 1990 through 1999, we got It, Sometimes They Come Back, Golden Years, The Tommyknockers, The Stand, The Langoliers, Quicksilver Highway, Mick Garris's The Shining, and then Storm of the Century.
Storm of the Century, and I think Tommyknockers. The Langoliers I definitely remember. And actually, a lot of what I remember about all of that stuff may be the Langoliers. I'm not sure. I honestly don't remember.
Well, when we were talking about it, and you said you remembered the airport, I was like, he's thinking about Langoliers.
Well, that's what I just realized is the airport is definitely the Langoliers.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, it's funny, too, because...
But I remember the advertising for Tommyknockers.
Yeah, the advertising was creepy, but it's funny that you mentioned Langoliers for two reasons. One, because... in the Slack channel, shout out to Straight Chilling Slack, that's where all my weirdo friends are, they were talking about the Langoliers earlier this week, not related to the Tommyknockers, but the Tommyknockers and the Langoliers, I'm not surprised you get them mixed up because they came out near the same time. They were 2 years apart, but they also are like regarded as horrible miniseries.
Yeah. The Langoliers, I'm definitely remembering. That's the airport stuff with like the thing that comes out of the sky and all of this stuff. That's what I'm remembering.
And fun fact, that was filmed at the Bangor airport. And I did not know that until we arrived in Maine, but the Bangor airport has not changed very much since 1995, I guess.
Why would they?
Yeah. So it felt a little eerie. It was very crowded when we were there, but if it had been empty, like, I think I would have been like, where are the CGI creatures?
I still feel like I've seen Tommyknockers, though. I just don't have much of a recollection of it.
What about some of the other ones? Did you see any of the other ones?
I remember Storm of the Century being advertised. I don't remember if I watched it or not. I remember none of the other ones ring a bell as far as...
Did you watch it?
No, I didn't watch it. I didn't see it until I was older. Same thing with The Stand. I didn't see it until we watched it on that YouTube
Yes.
we found.
Yeah, I made
Russian.
you watch it or The Stand over I think it was Labor Day weekend or something.
But I don't have even the Shining miniseries. I don't remember that at all. And that would The Langoliers was 95, and I remember we lived in Tulsa at the time. But then after that, I don't remember don't remember any of that. 99, we would have been freshmen, and so it is likely that I was at basketball practice or something like that, or not involved with the TV in the same way. So
well, it's kind of sad that you didn't see basically the best ones. Then of course there was Salem's Lot in the 70s, which was way before our time and was sort of very separate from this cycle. But Salem's Lot, The Stand, and then Storm of the Century to a lesser degree are the ones that are considered to be top tier.
I feel like maybe I did see the first, because it was at that point, Storm of the Century was just 2 nights, if I remember correctly.
Actually, I think it might be 3.
I feel like I saw the first night and didn't see the rest of it, so.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about Storm of the Century before, and it's interesting because Stephen King wrote it specifically for TV, specifically just as a script, not as a book. Especially, and he's not always the best screenwriter, so I think it's especially surprising because of that. But okay, so back to the Tommyknockers, which now might also be mixed with the Langoliers. But what can you specifically remember about it?
Now I don't know. The main things that I thought I remembered are probably not that. I remember the green. I feel like I remember seeing the ads for it now more than anything, but I don't remember watching it. When did it come out?
94, 93, 93.
93. So that would have been 4th grade? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that all I saw was advertisements for it. I don't think I saw any of it on TV. Well,
the only thing I remember the green also. I remember Jimmy Smits specifically. I didn't really know who he was, but he was on TV a lot. So I had seen his face just in, I guess, other TV shows and stuff. So I remember him. And then I do remember the scene with the spaceship sticking out of the ground.
Yeah.
But other than that, I remember no plot points. Even when I read the book for the first time a few years ago, I was this and watching the Tommyknockers, there's no correlation here of oh yeah, I remember that. I have zero plot remembrances from this movie.
Well, it'd be interesting to look it up and see what other people think about it, because that may be across the board. That may be how they look at it.
Well, and I also, like you, remember the marketing, and I remember the marketing specifically being very creepy. I remember little teasers, just promos. But I will say, I went and looked up, I was trying to find those, and I can't find any just teaser trailers, but the actual trailer for the movie that ran on TV is awful. It's not scary at all. So I don't know if it's just because I'm an adult now. Maybe it was scary when I was 9 years old. I don't know. But yeah. So, folks, we're going to take a break. We're going to spend 4 hours watching this movie, and through the magic of editing, we'll be back with you in 10 seconds.
And not yet.
It's feeling.
It's an incredible high.
Tonight, an ABC miniseries. The master storyteller of Stand By Me, The Shining, and It.
Ta-da!
Stephen King takes you to the town of Haven.
That should have been you who found it.
Found what?
Where something wonderful is happening.
This is gonna change everything.
What the hell is it?
Touch it.
Pray it doesn't happen to you.
That thing out there is talking.
There's something miraculous about it.
Something is happening to you. Something's happening to this town, and I'm telling you, it has something to do with that thing in the woods in there.
Don't you betray me like this! Are you ready to complete the becoming? Are you ready to become one voice?
Jimmy Smits, Mark Heldenberger, Joanna Cassidy, E.G. Marshall, and Tracy Lords. Now, the Tommyknockers.
And we're back, for real.
Legitimately this time.
Yeah, we've teleported through space and time.
Have we, though?
I think we have. Okay, so first of all, after now watching this, do you think you've seen this before?
Never seen that in my life.
So truly, when you said you had seen the Tommyknockers, you were just thinking of the Langoliers.
I had definitely seen the advertisements for
Okay.
it. I remember it had to have been the ads for it is what I had seen.
So you saw the ads for the Tommyknockers. You definitely saw the Langoliers. I will say, though, that brings up a good point. I do think that the Tommyknockers in general is, like, fairly iconic because we both remembered this, like, green glow, which is an important part of the story, and you remember the advertising so much that you thought you had seen this movie before.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, I think it has that going for it. Okay, so getting into the specifics of this movie, just overall, did you like the story in general? This weird aliens are infecting the town.
The concept, I thought, worked. I thought it was a good concept. The execution maybe is where it fumbles a little bit on that.
Yeah.
And part of that may be because of the format that it's in, being made for TV at the time and all that. That may have impacted it more than anything. But it's like it feels like that. Like watching the first part, especially, I was like, there's definitely some meat to the story. Like they did a really good job of building up the story and everything. So yeah, I thought the story was decent. Like it was. There's been way worse stories that I've interacted with, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I said the same thing about the book, but I think it's a pretty cool. Like it is an alien story, but there's so much more going on than that. And the fact that well, not till the end. We don't see, like, there aren't physical monsters in this movie. It's more just about the influence and, like, people turning weird, which I think is really intriguing, especially if you haven't read the book. You're like, what is happening here? So I do think the story is pretty original and, like, keeps you sucked in pretty good. Okay. In general, we like the story. Did you like this movie?
I liked the first part a lot more than I liked the second part.
Yeah.
I feel like it should have been a 3-part of like the introduction of the ship and then people start to turn, like have the introduction of the ship and then like end with the people starting to turn, have a whole episode dealing with the people turning and then deal with the rest at the end.
Yeah, there were definitely some leaps. Like, in my notes, I put, like, whenever they all show up at Town Hall the second time and Bobby is, like, evangelizing, I was like, when did these people organize?
Well, yeah, it seemed like the alien mind hive started pulling them all together.
I guess so.
I guess. But, like, that would have been a great way, they introduce the idea, and then they start to organize, and then execution at the rest of it would have made sense in 3 parts.
Yeah. Having read the book right before watching this, I feel like it's hard for me to watch the movie objectively because I have all of the filler that, like, you didn't have just watching the movie.
Yeah, I knew nothing about that.
Well, and that's they spend a lot of time on just individual people and like how the hive mind slowly comes together. And of course, that's very difficult to convey on the screen because so much in the book is like, he just tells us what people are thinking.
Well, I kind of read a little bit about the production and all that stuff just to kind of get an idea of what, like in 93, what the production was like and everything like that. And it doesn't seem like maybe it was originally slated to be it was just a 2-part. It doesn't seem like they shot it like a 2-part because the second part definitely crams a lot of stuff in.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning. They're like, okay, we got to get from here to here to here to be able to even do the rest of this stuff. And so it was like, I think it was edited to 2 parts. I don't think they were originally planning
Maybe
that
so.
being 3.
When we stopped at the halfway point to take a break, I was like, wait a minute. We've only gotten through the very beginning of this story, and we only have half of this movie left. So I had a feeling that they were going to have to cram a lot in there. So to hear you say that you think it would be better in 3 parts makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so we liked the first half better than the second half, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with like the character and the townspeople and the cast. So what did you think about this little town of Haven and the characters?
I liked the magician kid was like, it was interesting, for sure. I didn't really care for Jimmy. What's his name?
Gardner? You didn't like Guard?
I didn't really like Guard all that much.
Controversy. Why didn't you like Guard?
Well, at least in this, they spent so much time around the, like, him being an alcoholic and all of that stuff, and it's like, that seems to be about all we know about him, is that he is an alcoholic, is struggling with his alcoholism, and has a metal plate in his head. Yeah. That's it. That's all we know.
Which you were confused about the metal plate.
Yeah.
You were like...
Because it's kind of like casually there.
So you feel like they didn't go into enough detail about the metal plate in his head.
They didn't go... I feel like there were some things that they could have gone into more detail that would have made it, like, more... It made him more of an interesting character. For him to be the main character throughout the entire thing, it was like, I don't think we really know much about him. Generally, like... Okay, so why do we care about this guy?
So
because he's not connected to them.
So you're gonna have to just bear with me while I compare the miniseries to the book. I just can't not do it.
Here we go.
So in the book, Guard is like a horrible
put on my
person.
Spectacles.
Yeah, put on your thinking cap. So Guard is like a really horrible person in the book. Not only is he an alcoholic, but if
he would have been a horrible person in the show, it would have made more sense.
I love Guard. He's not a likable person, but I think he's a great character because his alcoholism is so bad in the book that he accidentally shoots his wife when he's in a blackout. And in the book, Bobby keeps him drunk the entire time he's helping her dig up the ship because she knows it will incapacitate him.
That would have made a lot more sense. Now, I understand why they didn't do that for ABC.
Yes. This is the sanitizing of, network
But,
TV.
like, if he was a jerk, and, like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if a lot of quotation marks him being a jerk was Jimmy Smith's trying to be a jerk, but just being a terrible actor.
Yeah. Well, the fact that he only, after he gets to Haven, he only drinks once, and it's in the bar when the guy, like, buys him a drink. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he, like, pours alcohol out twice into Bobby's sink, I'm like, no, he should drink. He should be drinking. Like, and he's only a hero in the book because, like, he has to be. Like, literally, there's no one else to, like, save the day.
Yeah.
And it's not because he's a great guy.
That would make a whole lot of sense in the story. That's where he's really lacking in this, is that there's, like, it sounds like the main thing that is... they presented the main thing, but they didn't present the why around it either. They just kind of...
even, like, at the end when Bobby is like, I've always been there for you, like, you have to be there for me. Like, that was their way of communicating, like, the complication of their relationship. And, like, also in the book, they're not lovers. Like, they have slept together, like, they occasionally sleep together, but they're more... like colleagues and friends, and so they have a very complicated, deep relationship.
Well, the first part painted it like they were together. The second part does not.
Yeah.
Now, the part of that is because she's in the thing and all that, he's not. But, like, there's references of, like, the author, her being the author that takes care of him. There's references to that in the second one. But in the first part, it's like they're together. Like,
yeah, they seem together.
It seems like they're together.
Yeah. So I will say, though, I think that seeing Guard and Bobby together, we get to see them together a lot in this miniseries, just living life. And, like, Bobby is normal until the very end. But in the book, like, when Guard makes it to her house, she's already, like, lost a bunch of weight and is, like, 3/4 of the way to, quote-unquote, becoming. So in the book, we don't really get to see Guard and Bobby together, like, normal. So that is one thing about the miniseries that I do like, is that we do get to see them together, just, like, spending time together before Bobby really falls off the deep end. Because I love... Bobby, I think, is a really good character, and I like her a lot, and in the book, we just don't get enough time with her. So that is one change I actually like about
Well, I
the
wonder
miniseries.
if it was part of that, too, is a cultural thing of, like, in the book, you can present them as not being together but still having a romantic relationship, but TV is a lot different.
Right, yeah.
Than that.
It's just...
Especially in 93 when this was
on.
And
they didn't have the time to, like, develop a really nuanced relationship. It was easier to just sort of make
you can put
couple.
Descriptive words in there that really drive it that you can't really capture the same way on screen.
Yeah. So,
especially with the budget and everything that they were doing.
And that's part of the reason why Guard goes along with her, is because she has always been there for him in his really horrible, deep, complicated times. And so it makes a little bit more sense in the book why he is just there for her. And he's plastered. So
Yeah. Do you think he's a better poet when he's drunk? Because he said he hadn't written anything in a while.
I don't, actually. I don't think he's a better poet when he's drunk. Okay, so other characters, obviously Guard and Bobby are like the big ones, but I really liked how at the very beginning we set up Grandpa Ev with his grandkids, and he gave his grandson the magic kit. I really like that we sort of started the story with that family because it, I think, anchors the whole movie. So we have like Guard and Bobby, and then we have Grandpa Ev and his family, and I think those two dynamics kind of keep the story balanced. And I also like that right off the bat he sets up the thing with the woods, and he's like, the woods are magic. And of course we find out that's because there's a spaceship in them. But I found that to be really charming. And I thought his character was good all the way through. Yeah, and he's the one who's like trying to get the word out to other people that like, hey, something's going on. Which, by the way, I said this when we were watching it, but we've got Butch Dugan, who's the cop from the neighboring town, which is Derry. And so when Ev shows up to the police station and he's like, look at all of this history that's happened over the years, and Butch is like, oh, and you think they're all connected? That's hard to believe, old man. And I'm like, you are a cop in Derry, the home of Pennywise, and you have a problem believing that there's a weird thing that's all connected throughout history? What's wrong with you, man?
Well, if it was made in modern times, it would be all connected to the Kingverse. Like, they would have a whole thing of all of them all connecting together.
Yes. So, of course, only King nerds would understand that. But still, I was like, really, man? There's a clown in your sewer. I also really liked Ruth, the cop.
Yeah.
She was cool. And I also liked Becca Paulson, who's the woman who kills her husband with the TV. Mm-hmm. Her character, I thought, was really, like, cute and fun. And it made me really mad at Joe, the philandering postman. Because I'm like, I understand that, like, Nancy is young and hot, but, like, your wife seems really fun and cute. And why don't you want to just have fun with your own wife? So her character is not that interesting in the book. So I thought it was really sweet how, like, Ruth and Becca are friends. Like, I feel like the town in general does feel pretty, like, lived in and real. And everybody's very kind of charming. Now,
so just so I'm remembering correctly, the hot new woman at the post office is the postmaster.
Yes.
He works for her.
He works for her, yeah.
Like, he's made some choices in his life.
Right, so you're thinking, clearly you're much older, you should be the postmaster.
Why didn't you get considered for this job?
He's probably, I mean, he's not a good husband. Maybe he's not a good postman either.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like he's lacking in a lot of fronts.
Yeah, just all around, Joe Paulson, grade A loser. He deserved to be electrocuted by a Tommyknocker TV.
Yeah. Because she couldn't kill him, so the TV killed her.
I actually liked that too, which this kind of segues into, I wanted to talk about how the effects hold up, and I really liked Becca's TV talking to her. Mm-hmm. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a good approach to that.
Yeah. In the book, it's a picture of Jesus. Oh. A picture of Jesus talks to her. It
could have been that, too.
So I liked the change. That would be too weird for people. The change of just the TV's talking to you makes sense. But other effects. Like, how did you feel about the effects in general?
Well, so you have to look at it from 1993 made-for-TV budget.
Yes.
Which is different now than how many series are made now. And I thought generally most of the effects were adequate. The one that I did not like, and they used it a whole bunch at the end, is the whole lipstick thing.
Oh gosh.
Like, they were like, we're going all in on this. And
that was awful.
It was not good. And they could have done a lot of things without doing the effects the way that they did for that specific weapon.
Yeah. That concept was just ludicrous.
Yeah.
I mean, all of their little inventions were very goofy, but also I felt like pretty much fit the tone of the story. And again, I liked the green glow. A little bit of that really went a long way in this movie.
Okay, what was your favorite invention?
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Because there's a few of them.
My favorite invention... I mean, probably Bobby's telepathic typewriter.
I mean, that was pretty good.
Probably my favorite.
You know what my favorite was?
What?
The chef made a sandwich.
Oh, yeah. The BLT
He was like, I have an idea for a sandwich!
The BLT maker. Yeah, I mean, I would love to have one of those BLT makers in my kitchen for sure. Oh, also... when Nancy makes the modified gun and she's talking to, I can't remember his first name, but it's Hilly and Danny's dad. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, how horny is this woman?
Is it like that in the movie? Or I mean, in the book? Not.
No, it's just.
So,
her,
do you think it's because of the casting?
I do. I kind of do. Yes.
I kind of thought, I was like, I wonder if they made this a more sexual character based on who they cast for.
Because like she's foxy in the book, but she's not Tracy Lord's foxy. I don't think in the book.
Yeah, and she was like going for everybody. Like, well, at the beginning, she was just doing it to do it. Yeah. And then as as they were connecting and all that stuff, like there was more of that, like
because it seemed like she was legitimately into Joe the postman, and then she's like sort of getting up on I can't remember his name, but Bobby and Danny's dad, and I'm just like, okay, maybe this is just her. Maybe now that she's a Tommyknocker bot, this is her tool, you know.
Maybe it has to do with, like, because, like, they're messing around in the car in the woods whenever they connect with it, right?
Yes.
So I wonder if it's part of, it would be interesting to go back and look and see if, like, that's part of, like, how they interact with it. I also was kind of wondering if, in general, like, they were all attracted to each other because they were connected too, and she was just on the hornier scale of that, the hornier side of that scale.
I mean, I applaud the thought that you have put into this, but I do not think the people that made this movie put that thought into it.
Yeah, more than likely, it just had to do with the fact that they got Tracy Lords and they just sexualized it a lot.
Yeah, they were like, listen, how do we make this a little more adult? A little more serious, and they're like, yeah, we'll make it.
Well, the funny thing is, if they made it now, it would be on probably Max or something like that, and there would be, to borrow a phrase from Straight Chill, and there'd be way more yabos on this one.
Bravo. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I expected the effects to be really horrible. They were better than I thought, to be honest. But they also, I think part of what they did is they weren't too over-ambitious. Like, they didn't try to do anything too ridiculous. I also thought that just the general, production design and art direction was quite good. Like, we looked it up, and I was like, this actually feels like a real rural town. And you said they filmed it in New Zealand?
Yeah, at a rural town in New Zealand.
But it felt really real. I loved Bobby's house. Like, you can tell that's an actual house. And it, what I pictured in my mind as far as what Haven would look like and what Bobby's house would look like and what the woods would look like, it was all spot on. So I did not love the score, but really thought that the production design was very good.
The music really was, it seemed like they didn't have the budget to do anything, and so they just did the basics.
It was just overly sentimental.
Yeah, well, even at the beginning, it started off way too strong, and it was just maybe they were covering for stuff or something, I don't know.
And I mean, I will say, there has been some really excellent music in other miniseries, the music in the It miniseries is a little campy, but fits the tone. The music in The Stand is fantastic. The music in the Shining miniseries is really good. So I feel like, maybe they just didn't hire the right person or didn't spend the right amount of time on it. But I just felt like as much as the visuals were right, the score was just very not right.
When I was reading it, the Wikipedia, I think is where I was reading it, was talking about a lot of the stuff was was done in New Zealand. They used people from New Zealand for it. So I wonder if that was part of it.
Maybe.
Too. So they had a really, really short window to shoot too.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean that could definitely speak to some of the shortcomings. But I think also another thing on the effects before we move on. They clearly, I don't think, had the time or the budget to make these people, like, as they're becoming. I don't think they had the resources to make them look, like, really grotesque. But I feel like they did pretty good with just makeup and making people look like they're deteriorating. But I would love to see a full-scale transformation of these people into Tommyknockers.
Yeah, what it really looked like was they were on meth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Losing some teeth and losing weight and looking, just across the board, just looking like they were well into a meth addiction.
Yeah, which is apt for, like, the addiction metaphor that's clearly being presented in this.
It was kind of an interesting thing, too, because it was like... So they start off all really smart and getting these ideas and everything like that, and we know that the aliens are communicating with them, and then, like... It doesn't seem like the aliens are communicating with them at the end, as they get far into it, like when they get to the point where, like, they're trying to uncover the ship completely. Like, it doesn't seem like they're really being directed on any of that stuff.
They seem a little clueless, don't they?
So I wonder if it was just too much for, like, I would wonder if, generally speaking, it's supposed to be too much for their bodies to handle. With all that.
So again, in the book, they are, like, they're literally turning into, like, what the Tommyknockers look like. Like, that's what people's bodies are turning into. They're basically being so it's not just that their teeth fall out, their hair falls out, their skin starts to become translucent, and their body shapes actually start to change. So again, that would be very complicated.
Yeah.
Even today, like, even if you had an unlimited budget, I think it would be difficult to pull off that concept. But also, it's not a big twist that they're dead. Like, Bobby knows they're dead. And that it's just, they're such an advanced, like, different race that it doesn't matter that they're dead. Just their presence and, like, the presence of the spaceship is enough to still, like, influence the town. Mm-hmm. Which I find really interesting. And they never come back to life. Like, Bobby and Guard get into the ship and find, like, their bodies, but they don't ever come back to life, which I find, again, really an interesting concept. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the ending. What did you think about the ending?
It was really awkward. Just...
So you feel like it does not fit the rest of the story?
No, I know that the ending was changed. When I was reading the Wikipedia, I know that they said that King signed off on the changes, and what happens with all that stuff. I think they ran into the problem where they crammed so much into what would have been, like, an hour and a half of TV, I think is roughly what it would have been broken down to. But it's probably more like 3 hours with commercials. Probably 2 hours. But
yeah, it would have been 2 hours.
There's so much crammed in there that it was just like, and here's the end. And we're not even going to pace that out properly. Like, it's just kind of like, it happened.
Yeah, once they get into the ship, it just feels so vastly different from the rest of the movie. Which, again, even that, like, the design of the inside of the ship, I think was pretty cool. And I honestly, like, didn't mind the alien design either.
So the aliens were designed by a guy in New Zealand. That's one of the things I read.
Okay. So. Yeah, I mean, they looked like typical aliens, but a little different. Like, it was a pretty unique design.
I guess there was there was a lot of positive reaction to that at the time.
Yeah, so even though, again, execution maybe wasn't great, I liked the design. I will say, though, and again, this is a TV thing. I mean, everything we're saying about this movie is the caveat of for a made-for-TV movie. But in the book, everybody dies. Bobby dies, the dog dies, all the townspeople die, Guard dies, like, everybody dies, basically. So it did feel a little bit too sweet that, like, oh, Bobby goes back to normal, and she finds Davy, and the dog gets out, and they all get out, and they all live happily ever after. Like, that to me was, but again, I get it. Like,
yeah, the writer made the changes and, like, showed them to the King, and he said it was okay. He liked it. He thought it was a better ending for TV. Generally, they were like, this is a better fit for TV than a super sad ending of everybody dying.
Oh, for sure. And you definitely can't kill the dog. I mean, come on. One thing I will say, though, about the ending is I thought the scene with the shed was actually pretty creepy. When he goes in and, like, finds Ev and the dog and everybody, like, hooked up to the goo. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought that was kind of creepy.
Yeah, I mean, that was, like, a good presentation. Like, if they had done that pretty consistently throughout, maybe that would have... It really stuck out as, like, clearly effort's been put into this.
Yeah. Well, in the book... I'm sorry, I have to do it. But in the book, like, it teases out, almost from the very beginning, that there's something going on in that shed. And you have to wait almost the whole book for Guard to finally go in the shed. And so it's like a big...
Do they even... I'm trying to remember when they... Like, do they show the shed in the first half?
I think so. I think Guard notices the shed. And of course, I think I only noticed it because I'm looking for it. But that is when Guard, like, goes into the shed, that's when he knows for sure that, like, Bobby and the Tommyknockers are evil and are, like... using people for batteries. So I did like that sort of payoff as well, that when they get into the ship, Davy is there and they're, like, using him as a battery. It works in the story that's going on in this movie because we don't really know what's happening. Why are people being depleted? What's going on? Why are they losing their teeth? And so to get to the end and it's like, oh, they're using you for batteries so they can regenerate and repower their ship. That all tracks.
Yeah.
That all tracks. So I will say that. And I think, yeah, like we were talking about earlier, generally the bones of the story work out even through the end, mm-hmm. even though the end is pretty ridiculous. Oh, one thing I forgot to bring up, and I know you feel the same way because I saw your face, but, like, Ruth and the dolls.
That didn't need to exist at all. Like, that had... The beginning when they introduced the dolls, like, they're introducing... She's quirky, and she has this...
It's very jarring, though.
Yeah. And it's like, well, they only did that so they can have this scene here. And, like, so then neither of that need to be...
Too late, Ruth. Too late, Ruth.
It was just kind of like, this has not happened in any other way in this movie at all. It completely doesn't fit the movie at all.
There were a million ways they could have disposed of Ruth. I don't know. There are dolls in the book, but they're not that big of a deal. I do not know why they chose to put the dolls in this movie. Now, that Scarecrow doll is pretty creepy.
Yeah.
I was even thinking, like, maybe it could have just been one doll. If she had one doll that started talking to her and that turned on her, that maybe could have worked. But this, like, little battalion of dolls was, I think, the most ridiculous part of the whole movie.
Yeah, it did need to be there. They could have, like, I was like, is this going to be actually them talking to her or in her head? And if it was in her head, it would have been different. But there was actual dolls doing actual things to an actual person.
Yeah, that was pretty great. Okay, so is there anything else you want to bring up that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't know if there's much of a discussion around this, but can we talk about how ineffective the people were at digging up the ship?
Sure. Oh, actually, yes, I want to talk about this. Yes.
So, because the whole presentation is that they're super smart now, and, like, they're digging nowhere. They're not doing anything. They're like lightly clearing around the top of the ship and not digging down to dig out the ship or anything like that. It's like they just like, well, maybe we should go over here and dig some too. And it's like, well, why don't you just dig down to the bottom of where you are?
So, I mean, this has to be a budgetary constraint. I can't imagine that they had the money for a big giant prop, but so this is a big problem for me. The shape of the ship is a big problem for me because in the book it is a saucer. It's just your typical saucer. And when Bobby trips over it, she just trips over what she thinks is just a metal edge of something. And she thinks maybe it's an old refrigerator, maybe it's a car, because she's lived on this land forever. Her family's lived on it forever. She's dug up weird stuff on her land before. So she starts digging just out of curiosity and just keeps uncovering more and more of a spherical edge, right? And so she and Guard, that's what they do. They have to dig down because this is just a saucer. And so by the time they get to the hatch, which is like the end of the book, they've dug down like 100 feet. And they're just to the middle where the hatch is. So you really get a sense of like the scale of how big this ship is. And so 100%, everybody's just digging like what, 2-3 feet into the earth?
If that. And it's like right on the surface. It's not even like they had to dig down to get to it. They're like, just brush this aside, and where you're looking at the top. So it would have made sense if Guard's character was drinking and drunk. That it would have matched his digging, because he's literally moving dirt into a wheelbarrow and like dumping it over here and not digging down, just picking up the dirt here and taking it over here, and not like literally he's not helping in any way, shape, or form.
So yes, him being drunk would make more sense. So anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, so last couple of questions here. Do you ever want to watch this movie again? And under what circumstances would you watch this movie again?
I don't think I'll ever watch that again. It would have to be like under gunpoint.
Like, what if you were plastered like Guard?
No,
not even a drunk watch.
No, if I'm drunk like that, I'm gonna be watching Joe Dirt.
Oh, okay.
That's the go-to drunk movie.
Okay. So for me, I actually enjoyed this more than I thought. So I think I could watch this movie again. I mean, it's difficult because it is 3 hours long. I wish it was an hour and a half. But even so, I think I would watch this movie again as part of a double feature. Feature 1, Maximum Overdrive. Feature 2, the Tommyknockers.
Well, you start off with some cocaine to just get you up, and then you just drink yourself down.
Because they share a lot of DNA. They're both really bonkers. They're both Stephen King coke stories. They share a homicidal coke machine. Both movies. Yeah. Someone gets dispatched by a coke machine. And I think that's delightful. So I would make a day out of it. Especially if I had my own movie theater. Dun, dun, dun. I think that would be a really fun day. I think it'd be a fun day. And you could make Tommyknocker cocktails like we talked about earlier. You could, I don't know what food I would serve people, but you could make an event out of it. And
you serve them BLTs.
BLTs, yes. Maximum Overdrive, Tommyknockers. I think it could be fun.
That's a lot in one double feature.
It's a whole day, but I know freaks that would do it. I know a lot of people who would have a great time. Yeah. And it could be like a Rocky Horror Picture Show vibes where, you don't have to be quiet. You throw popcorn at the screen, you laugh, you joke.
Not at my house. You sit there and you be quiet.
Well, that's why I said theater. I would do this at someone else's establishment and then pay someone to clean up the popcorn. Okay, so knowing that we like the story and we think there are good things in this movie, but it could definitely be better. Is there a filmmaker that comes to mind that you think could maybe do a more polished version of this story?
I actually found myself thinking like a firing on all cylinders, M. Night Shyamalan would have been could do a great version of this.
Do you think he could still do it, or are we talking like early 2000s?
It has a very like Village vibe to it. To me,
okay,
that I think that if he had those bones, he could do something with that. Could have done something with that. Now, the execution could be just as equal. But like, I actually like found myself thinking, I was like, this feels like it's got like a lot of the things that he would look for in a story.
Okay, I can sort of see that. I can sort of see that.
Like a troubled main character. Like, he loves those troubled main characters.
And he likes the family unit, like the redemption of, like, relationships and such. So there's some of that in here. Okay. So I was thinking if this movie, if we were back in the 80s when the book was written, I would have said maybe Joe Dante because he's good at sort of zany stuff, But now...
I think it would need to be serious. Like, really, really serious.
Me too. So now I would say Alex Garland. Do you know who that is?
The name is familiar.
He's the guy who did Ex Machina.
Okay.
And also that movie Annihilation, where Natalie Portman goes out into the shimmer where there's like this force field and people don't know what it is. And at the end, she encounters that weird, like, prismatic-looking alien. Do you remember this movie?
No.
You watched it with me. Anyway, like, he...
Was I drinking vodka? Like, Guard?
No, Guard. You were sober. But he is very good with... I mean, you liked Ex Machina, I know.
Yeah.
So he's very good with serious concepts, and he's very good with sci-fi. But he also is not afraid to let things be weird and to let things be ambiguous.
Yeah, I think if you made this really serious and you have to include the whole alcohol thing, like you have to have that part of the character for it to hold up, to be able to carry through. Otherwise, it's just bland. It was too bland. If you have the struggle with alcohol like there, and then you have it being used against him, then it makes the end like more like it can be more of a well, if you do the true end, then it's everybody dies, and then it's like, well, they deserved it. That type of, but like it would, I think it would flow a lot better. You could do it, and you could do it in a couple parts. Now they would do it probably in 8 parts, and that may be too much. I think you could probably do like 4 or 5. They probably left some stuff, from the story that they could probably put in there to kind of make some flow. But if you do a generally like the 3-act structure with it, but do it in multiple parts, so you could have that. I think the problem is that they did the first act and they put act 2 and 3 together at the end and crammed it together, and so you don't have the play out of that. So
yeah, I think you could do a regular, like, 2-hour movie version of this story. Of course, that would require, like, some rewrites and some changes. But it would be great as, like, these days, I think about the least you'll get is, like, a 6-part. You could do a 6-part limited series of this, I think. But, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think we've gotten the goofy version that's sort of fun. I would love to see a serious version that deals with kind of the more serious themes and gives us some really cool weird effects.
Well, and the other thing that would be present in it now that you don't have back then is that you could get A-grade actors for it.
Absolutely.
All of these actors were either on the way up or the way down. They were not like top at all.
I will say though, I love Jimmy Smits as Guard. I think he's perfect. And so I was trying to think the whole time we were watching it, like, who would I cast as Bobby and Guard? And I don't know, because I think those 2 actors were really good. Like, do you have any thoughts about that?
He was, so I don't know who I would have play either of them. Part of it is I'm not super up on who would be, the more it people right now. Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting. I'm sure they could find a bunch of different interesting people to do it. Those, like I said, the quality of the actor would be much better. I do know that he was on L.A. Law right before this, and he left that show because he wanted to get into like more serious acting, like movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And then like 2 years later, he's on NYPD Blue.
Yeah. You know what though? Jimmy Smits is like, he's very respected now.
Now. So if he played this role more like when he was on Dexter,
yeah,
I think it would be I was actually thinking, I was like, if they made this now, they could bring him back and have him play the same character.
I know, he actually
and do it all over again. He would do a lot better.
Looks pretty young. Like, Jimmy Smits is probably in his 60s. He could easily be in his 50s. If we wanted to make Guard and Bobby just a little older.
Yeah, I was like, I wouldn't mind seeing him do that again. I think that I think he would have a much better engagement with it too.
Yeah. Well, and I think what I really like about Jimmy Smits and Marg Hellenberger, is they both, like, they're attractive people, but they just look like regular people. I feel like now they would probably cast some total smoke show as Bobby. And I like Bobby just being like just a regular girl. She's just out there in her high-rise jeans digging up this ship. I feel like you need somebody relatable like that. So, I don't know. Like, final thoughts about this. I think like I said, I expected this to be worse than it was because I've always heard such awful things. And while the second half was super flawed and was like a little bit of a slog to get through, I thought the first half was like pretty lovely.
Yeah, the first half is good. It's a good presentation. The second half is off the rails, and that's probably where most of the critique comes from. Now, my general understanding is that the book wasn't widely regarded as anything positive.
It wasn't. So that's part of why I've gone down this rabbit trail, is because I really like this story a lot. And I've become just really fascinated over the last couple of weeks with just how it was received, why people feel the way they do about it. And so I'm glad that we went down this rabbit trail. So thank you, David, for spending your weekend watching the Tommyknockers and talking about the Tommyknockers. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Well, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for joining me on this Stephen King detour to talk all about the Tommyknockers, one of King's more bizarre works, both book and miniseries. I hope that you had fun, and I hope that I inspired you to check out something, maybe a little dumb, because as horror fans, we love our quote-unquote elevated horror and our super well-made horror. But let's be real, we're all here for the cheese. We love a good bad movie. And so I hope that you will check out the Tommyknockers, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So I still will be putting out that Color Out of Space adaptation that I mentioned. Date TBD. But stay tuned, as usual, to the socials, and I will keep you looped in as to what is coming next. But until next time, be careful when you're walking in the woods and stay spooky.